Lesson 3-5 is divide rational numbers. So before we start the lesson, I want to remind you of the rules for multiplying and dividing rational numbers. Remember, the rules are the same. All right, so now I want you to write down these couple rules. So it says the rules for dividing integers apply to all positive and negative rational numbers. So same sign, positive, different signs, negative. That's for multiplication and for division. So two numbers whose product is 1 are called multiplicative inverses. Another name for the multiplicative inverse, the reciprocal, you remember, the reciprocal is the flipped version of the fraction. So here, if I'm looking at 3/4, the reciprocal is 4/3. So if we multiply those together, we get 1. So this, again, if I multiply those together, that's equal to 1. That's 12 over 12. That's equal to 1. So when we, for example 1, we are dividing rational numbers. So we're going to divide fractions, rational numbers. So when we divide fractions, you guys, you remember from 6th grade, it is keep, change, flip. Now what that means is we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Let's write that down. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So, for example, 1a, we're going to keep, change, flip. The first fraction stays the same. That's 5/8. The division becomes multiplication. That changes to multiplication. And the second fraction changes to the reciprocal. So we want to flip this, okay, and it stays negative. So we're going to multiply times a negative 4/3. Now, just like what we said in the last class, before we multiply, we can simplify, okay? So here, the 4 divided by 4 becomes 1, and 8 divided by 4 becomes 2. And that's all we can do. So now, we're going to multiply straight across. So 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. And a positive, circle this, a positive times a negative, different signs, is a negative. Now for example B, we've got a negative 6/7 divided by 12, okay? If you want to try it on your own before doing it with me, then you can press pause and then do it on your own. So here, again, you guys, when we're dividing fractions, we're going to keep, change, flip. So the division is going to become multiplication. Okay. So the first fraction stays the same, negative 6/7. The division becomes multiplication, so that changes to multiplication. And now, this is a whole number. Now, when we look at the whole number, as a fraction, that is 12 over 1. So when we change that to the reciprocal, that's going to become 1 over 12. 1 over 12. And now, before we multiply, we can simplify. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. So when we multiply straight across, and multiply straight across. A negative times a positive, different signs. That means that's negative. And 1 times 1 is 1. And 7 times 2 is 14. There we go. All right, example 2 is divide rational numbers. Now, these rational numbers are mixed numbers. Now, remember, when we have a mixed number, we first have to change these to improper fractions. So, for example 1, we want to change these to improper fractions. Now, before we do that, let's do a little reminder. In this direction, we're going to multiply, and in this direction, we're going to add. So we've got 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So this is going to be 4 thirds, and of course that's a negative. We're going to continue writing division for now, because we're not going to do keep, change, flip yet. And now we're going to change the second fraction to an improper fraction. So 5 times 2 is 30, plus 2 is 32. So that's 32 over 15. And now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. We're going to keep, change, flip. So the first fraction stays the same. That's a negative 4 thirds. The division changes to multiplication. And the second fraction changes to the flipped version, which is the reciprocal. So we have 15 over 32. Now, before we multiply, we need to simplify. All right. So we can simplify the 3 and the 15 by dividing by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. And then we can simplify the 4 and 32. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 32 divided by 4 is 8. And again, now we multiply straight across. Okay? So we've got a negative times a positive, so that means different signs, negative. And we've got 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 8 is 8. And there's our simplified, our final answer. For example 2b, remember, when you have a whole number, in order to make it a fraction, you just put it over 1. Okay? So, the first fraction here, we have negative 5 over 1 divided by, and now we want to change this mixed number to an improper fraction. So, again, 3 times 1, and this is going to be a negative, sorry. This is a negative. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So this is going to be 4 thirds. And here, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Keep, change, flip. Okay? So the first fraction stays the same. So that's negative 5 over 1. The division becomes multiplication. And the second fraction becomes the reciprocal. So this is going to be times a negative 3/4. Now, here we have the same signs, negative and negative, so that's going to be a positive. And again, we do not need to write that plus right there, okay? It's going to be a positive. So now, we simplify before we multiply if we can, and it looks like we cannot. So now, we multiply straight across. So 5 times 3 is 15, and 1 times 4 is 4. Now here we have 15/4, we have an improper fraction, so we need to change that back to a mixed number. So 4 goes into 15 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12, so 15 minus 12, so we have 3 left over, so that's going to be 3 and 3/4. So for example 3, we want to divide rational numbers. So it says here, a 26.2-mile marathon has a water stop every 2 and 41/45 miles. The last water stop is at the finish line. How many water stops are there in the race? So if we take the whole thing, okay, here's the important information. The whole thing is 26.2 miles. That's the whole marathon. If we divide that by every 2 and 41/45 miles, and the last stop is at the finish line, how many water stops are there in the race? So we're going to take the whole thing and we're going to split it up every 2 and 41/45 miles. So that problem is 26.2 miles divided by 2 and 41/45. Okay, so this one, you can either change it to all fractions or all decimals. But this is what I'm deciding. If I have 41 divided by 45, that gives me a repeating decimal. So we have to change these to all fractions. Okay, so this is 26.2. That's 26 and 2/10. So this is 26 and 2/10 divided by 2 and 41/45. So here in this case, first we want to change all of the mixed numbers, both of the mixed numbers, to improper fractions. All right, so here are my improper fractions. Okay, so now we're going to keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. So we get 262/10. The division becomes multiplication, and the second fraction becomes the reciprocal. That's going to be 45/131. Now, before you multiply, you can simplify. So for 10 and 45, we can divide both of those by 5. So 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 45 divided by 5 is 9. Okay? Now if you'll notice, 262/131, we can divide 131 divided by 131, and that gives me 1. And 262 divided by 131, that gives me 2. So now we can multiply straight across. So we will multiply 2 times 9, that's 18. So here, this improper fraction, we can simplify 18 divided by 2, and that gives me 9. So that means we are going to have 9 water stations. Okay? Now, I do want to tell you that since we're learning how to use our calculator, you can also put this fraction in the calculator with your ABC button. So you will just type in 26.2 divided by 2, then the ABC button, 41, then the ABC button again, times 45, and then equals. And that should give you 9y.